The autumn wind carried a chill through the streets of Willow Creek as Lucy Matthews set up her humble apple cart at the edge of town, her fingers numb from the morning frost. Her life had become a desperate arithmetic of survival: 5 cents per apple, $2 for a day's food, and $4 for the rent due in 3 days. With only $11 to her name and no family to speak of since the epidemic took her parents last winter, the 22-year-old knew that if she didn't sell every last apple in her cart, she would face another night with an empty stomach. Lucy arranged the apples in neat rows, their red skin glistening with morning dew. She'd picked them herself from the abandoned orchard outside town, climbing trees in the darkness before dawn to avoid the property's new owner. It wasn't stealing. She told herself the trees would bear fruit whether someone picked them or not. Still, the shame of her circumstance burned hotter than the morning sun that was just beginning to crest over the distant mountains. It was 1873, and Willow Creek, Colorado was changing. The railroad had brought prosperity to some, but for others like Lucy, it had only raised the cost of living while opportunities dwindled. Before her father's death, she had worked in his small general store, keeping the books and serving customers with a smile that reached her eyes. Now that smile was practiced, forced, a mask she wore while peddling fruit to survive. "Apples! Fresh apples!" she called, her voice carrying down the dusty main street as shopkeepers began opening their doors for the day's business. A few regular customers approached Mrs. Peterson, who ran the boarding house, bought 2, and the blacksmith's apprentice traded her a newly forged hairpin for 1 juicy specimen. By midday, Lucy had sold only 8 apples. Her stomach growled in protest, but she ignored it, determined to make it through another day. The October sun offered little warmth as clouds gathered overhead, threatening rain that would surely drive away what few potential customers might pass by. As the afternoon wore on, Lucy's hopes diminished with the dwindling foot traffic. She pulled her threadbare shawl tighter around her shoulders, mentally calculating how much longer she could afford to keep her small room above the laundry if today's sales continued at this dismal pace. "Excuse me, miss." Lucy looked up from her worries to find a tall figure standing before her cart. The shadow he cast was long, his stance casual but somehow commanding. His clothes were travel-worn but of good quality, a dark vest over a cotton shirt, sleeves rolled up despite the chill, and a cowboy hat tipped low over his eyes. "How much for your apples?" the stranger asked, his voice deep and rich like honey over warm bread. 5 cents each, sir," Lucy replied, straightening her posture and offering her practiced smile. The man lifted his hat slightly, revealing eyes the color of a summer sky. He studied her for a moment, then looked down at the cart of apples. Lucy counted 32 remaining. She'd picked 40 that morning. "I'll take them all," he said simply. Lucy blinked in confusion, certain she had misheard him. "I'm sorry. All of them," he repeated, gesturing to the cart. "Every apple you've got." A mixture of relief and suspicion washed over Lucy. Nobody had ever bought more than 3 apples from her at once. "That would be $1.60, sir." The stranger reached into his pocket and pulled out a leather wallet. But instead of counting out the exact amount, he withdrew 2 gleaming gold coins and placed them in her palm. "This is $20, Lucy gasped, staring at the coins. "I can't possibly accept. Consider it an investment," he said with a slight smile that transformed his weathered face. "I have a proposition for you, if you're willing to hear it." Lucy hesitated, clutching the coins. In a town like Willow Creek, propositions from strange men rarely ended well for young women on their own. Reading her expression, the man quickly added, "A business proposition. My name is August Vance. I've purchased the Callaway Ranch outside of town, including that orchard you've been visiting before dawn." Lucy's heart plummeted. "Sir, I can explain." He raised a hand to stop her. "No need for explanations, Mississippi Matthews. Lucy Matthews, she replied, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. Miss Matthews, I'm not here to accuse you of anything. In fact, I admire your initiative. His eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled again. Those trees have been neglected for years. You clearly know how to select good fruit. Lucy remained silent, uncertain where this conversation was headed. I need someone who understands apple cultivation. The previous owner let the orchard go to ruin, but with proper care, it could be productive again. August Vance removed his hat completely now, holding it against his chest. I'm offering you a job, Miss Matthews. Full-time, with fair wages and a cabin on the property. Lucy stared at him, dumbfounded. You're offering me a job? But you don't know anything about me. I know you're up before dawn to pick apples. I know you're selling them at a fair price despite your obvious need. And I know quality fruit when I see it. He gestured to the cart. That tells me enough about your character and work ethic. A drop of rain fell on Lucy's cheek, followed quickly by another. The threatening storm was finally arriving. She looked around at the emptying street, then back at the man who had just upended her desperate existence with an unexpected offer. Why would you do this for a stranger? She asked, her voice barely audible above the increasing rainfall. August Vance's expression softened. Because 7 years ago, I was sleeping in a livery stable with nothing but a saddle for a pillow. Someone took a chance on me when they had no reason to. Sometimes, Miss Matthews, hope comes from the most unexpected places. The rain began to fall in earnest now, soaking through Lucy's thin shawl. August quickly removed his coat and held it over her. What do you say? He asked. Will you come work for me at the orchard? In that moment, standing in the rain with a cart of apples and $20 in gold more than she'd possessed in months, Lucy Matthews made a decision that would alter the course of her life. Yes, she said simply. I will. August Vance's smile was warm enough to chase away the October chill. Excellent. Now let's get these apples and you out of this rain. As he helped her gather the remaining apples into a burlap sack, Lucy felt something she hadn't experienced since before her parents' death, a faint, fragile flutter of hope for tomorrow. The ride to Callaway Ranch, now Vance Ranch, was silent except for the rhythmic clopping of hooves and the creaking of wagon wheels. Lucy sat beside August, clutching her meager belongings wrapped in a faded quilt. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a clean, earthy scent that mingled with the sweet fragrance of apples piled in the back of the wagon. It's about 3 miles outside town, August explained as they passed the last buildings of Willow Creek. The main house needs some work, but it's solid. Your cabin is smaller, but in better condition. The previous caretaker kept it up nicely. Lucy nodded, still processing the sudden change in her circumstances. Just hours ago, she had been counting pennies and fearing eviction. Now she was heading toward a new home and employment. It seemed too fortunate to be real. Mr. Vance, she began hesitantly. August, please, he corrected, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. August, Lucy tested the name. I feel I should be honest. I don't know much about proper orchard management. My father had a few apple trees behind our store, and I helped him tend them, but that's more experience than I have, he replied with a short laugh. I'm a cattleman by trade. The orchard came with the ranch, and it seemed a shame to let it go to waste. They crested a small hill, and the ranch spread before them in the valley below. A large 2-story house stood in the center, weathered but dignified, with a barn and several outbuildings nearby. Beyond them, Lucy could see neat rows of apple trees stretching across several acres. It's beautiful, she breathed. It will be again, August said with quiet determination. The previous owner, Old Man Callaway, let things slide after his wife died. But the bones of a good ranch are still here. As they approached the main house, Lucy noticed a thin trail of smoke rising from the chimney. August followed her gaze and explained, "That's Mrs. Winters. She comes in from town 3 days a week to cook and clean. She'll show you around the cabin and get you settled." The wagon rolled to a stop in front of the house, and August jumped down, coming around to offer Lucy his hand. She hesitated only briefly before accepting his assistance, noticing the calluses on his palm and the gentle strength with which he helped her down. "Thank you," she said, withdrawing her hand perhaps too quickly. The front door opened, and a plump, gray-haired woman appeared, wiping her hands on her apron. "You must be the apple girl Mr. Vance mentioned," she called cheerfully. "I'm Martha Winters." "Lucy Matthews," Lucy replied with a small curtsy, a habit from her more genteel days that surfaced occasionally. "Well, come along then, Miss Matthews. I've got the cabin aired out and a stew simmering that should be ready by supper time." Mrs. Winters turned to August. "Will you be joining us, Mr. Vance?" "No, thank you, Mrs. Winters. I have some accounts to go over. Perhaps Miss Matthews would appreciate a quiet evening to settle in." Lucy found herself oddly disappointed but nodded in agreement. "That would be best, I think." August tipped his hat. "We can discuss your duties tomorrow after breakfast. 7 o'clock in the main house." "I'll be there," Lucy promised, gathering her quilt-wrapped bundle. "Leave that," August instructed. "I'll bring your things to the cabin shortly. Mrs. Winters can show you the way now." Lucy followed the older woman down a well-worn path that wound through a small grove of cottonwood trees. The cabin came into view, a sturdy one-room structure with a stone chimney and a small porch. It was simple but infinitely more appealing than her cramped room above the laundry. "It's not fancy, Mrs. Winters commented, "but it's clean and tight against the weather." The previous caretaker, Mr. Jenkins, was a tidy sort. "It's perfect," Lucy said honestly, stepping through the doorway. The interior was basic but comfortable, a bed with a fresh-looking mattress in one corner, a small table with 2 chairs, a cooking stove, and a modest bureau. A colorful rag rug covered part of the plank floor, and curtains that had obviously been recently washed hung at the 2 windows. "Mr. Vance had me prepare it as soon as he returned from town this morning," Mrs. Winters explained, moving to light the lamp as the afternoon light began to fade. "Said he'd found someone to manage the orchard. He seems very impulsive," Lucy observed carefully. Mrs. Winters chuckled. "That he is when his mind's made up. But he's fair and honest, Miss Matthews. You could work for worse men." A knock at the door announced August's arrival with Lucy's belongings and the sack of apples. "Where would you like these?" he asked, standing in the doorway. "I can take them," Lucy said quickly, moving to relieve him of his burden. Their hands brushed as she took the sack, and Lucy felt a strange flutter in her chest that she attributed to nervousness. "There's a small cellar beneath the cabin," August informed her, pointing to a trapdoor in the floor she hadn't noticed. "It stays cool enough to store apples through winter." "Thank you," Lucy said, suddenly feeling the exhaustion of the day's events. "For everything." August studied her face for a moment, his expression unreadable. "Get some rest, Miss Matthews. Tomorrow we begin bringing that orchard back to life." After he left, Mrs. Winters insisted on helping Lucy unpack her meager possessions, clucking sympathetically at the worn state of her few dresses and linens. "Don't you worry," the older woman said kindly. "Things have a way of turning around when you least expect it. Now come up to the main house in about an hour for that stew. A growing girl needs proper feeding." Alone at last, Lucy sank onto the edge of the bed, running her hand over the clean quilt. Outside her window, she could see the edge of the orchard in the fading light. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of her exhaustion and the lightness of new possibility. Later, as she spooned Mrs. Winter's hearty stew into her mouth at the kitchen table of the main house, Lucy caught a glimpse of August through the partially open door to his study. He sat at a desk piled with papers, a frown of concentration on his face as he made notes in a ledger. He looked up suddenly, as if sensing her gaze, and their eyes met across the distance. Lucy quickly returned her attention to her bowl, but not before noticing the small smile that had touched his lips. That night, in her new bed in the quiet cabin, Lucy slept deeply for the first time in months, dreaming of apple blossoms and possibilities. The rooster's crow woke Lucy just before dawn, a familiar sound that momentarily confused her until she remembered where she was. Sunlight was just beginning to filter through the cabin windows as she rose and splashed cold water on her face from the basin. She dressed quickly in her best dress, which wasn't saying much, and pinned her chestnut hair into a simple but neat bun. After a moment's hesitation, she added the hairpin the blacksmith's apprentice had traded her yesterday, its simple design her only ornament. The walk to the main house took only minutes. Lucy arrived precisely at 7, pausing on the porch to straighten her collar before knocking. August himself answered the door, dressed in a clean shirt with his dark hair still damp from washing. "Good morning, Miss Matthews. Punctual, I appreciate that." "Good morning," Lucy replied, suddenly conscious of her worn dress and practical shoes. In the light of day, the disparity between employer and employee seemed more pronounced. August Vance might dress simply, but the quality of his clothing and the confident way he carried himself spoke of means beyond Lucy's experience. "Mrs. Winters has breakfast nearly ready," he said, stepping aside to let her enter. "We can discuss the orchard while we eat." The dining room was modestly furnished but elegant, with a polished table that could seat 8 comfortably. Only 2 places were set, one at the head and one to the right. "Mrs. Winters doesn't join you for meals?" Lucy asked, waiting for August to indicate where she should sit. "She prefers to eat in the kitchen," he explained, pulling out the chair to his right. "Please." Lucy sat, unfolding her napkin onto her lap with the proper manners her mother had insisted upon even in their modest circumstances. August noticed the practiced movement with raised eyebrows but made no comment. Mrs. Winters appeared with a platter of scrambled eggs, bacon, and biscuits, setting it between them with a cheerful, "Eat up while it's hot." Once they were served and Mrs. Winters had returned to the kitchen, August spread a map on the table beside his plate. "This is the property," he explained, tracing the boundaries with his finger. "The orchard covers these 5 acres here." Lucy leaned closer to study the map, noting the neat rows representing nearly 200 apple trees. "What varieties are planted?" According to Callaway's records, mostly Macintosh and Northern Spy, with some winesap and a few experimental varieties he was crossbreeding. August took a bite of eggs before continuing. "Do you know much about apple cultivation?" Lucy considered her answer carefully. "As I mentioned yesterday, my experience is limited to my father's small orchard. But I'm a quick learner, and I've read extensively on the subject." This was stretching the truth slightly. She had read one book on fruit cultivation that her father kept in the store. August seemed satisfied. "The immediate tasks are harvesting the remaining fruit before the hard frost hits, pruning the trees before winter, and planning for spring. The trees haven't been properly tended for at least 2 years, so we'll need to be aggressive with the pruning." Lucy questioned. "I'll help when I can, but my primary focus is getting the cattle operation running smoothly before winter." August poured coffee for both of them. "I've arranged for 2 local boys to assist you with the harvest starting tomorrow, the Peterson twins from town. 16 and strong as oxen, according to their mother." Lucy nodded, relieved she wouldn't be expected to harvest the entire orchard alone. "And the pruning? That I thought you might teach me?" August said with an unexpected smile that transformed his serious face. In the evenings, perhaps, when other work is done. Lucy found herself returning his smile without her usual reservation. I'd be happy to share what I know. They finished breakfast discussing practical matters, where tools were stored, the condition of the ladders and picking baskets, what to do with the harvested apples. August had already arranged for a merchant in Denver to purchase their crop, assuming the quality was acceptable. One more thing, August said as they finished their coffee. Your wages. He named a monthly sum that made Lucy's eyes widen. It was 3 times what she might have earned working in a shop in town. That's very generous, she managed. It's fair for the responsibility, he countered. Additionally, your housing and meals are provided. Mrs. Winters will leave provisions at your cabin, or you're welcome to take meals here when convenient. Lucy studied his face, still searching for the catch in this arrangement. May I ask what brought you to Willow Creek, Mr. Vance? You mentioned you're a cattleman. August set down his coffee cup, his expression becoming more guarded. I spent the last 7 years building a cattle operation in Wyoming, sold it at a profit and was looking for new opportunities. This place had good water rights, decent grazing land, and came at a fair price because Callaway's heirs wanted a quick sale. He shrugged. Simple business decision. Lucy sensed there was more to the story but knew better than to press. Well, I'm grateful for the opportunity, however it came about. After breakfast, August walked with Lucy to the orchard, pointing out the boundaries and discussing which sections should be harvested first. Up close, Lucy could see that while the trees had been neglected, they were fundamentally sound. They need attention, but they're not beyond saving, she observed, running her hand along the bark of a Macintosh. With proper pruning this winter and regular care next year, they could be quite productive. August watched her as she moved from tree to tree, assessing their condition with a natural confidence that contrasted with her previous hesitation. You know more than you let on, he commented. Lucy smiled slightly. Perhaps I understand trees better than I understand people. A common sentiment out here, August replied. He checked his pocket watch. I need to meet with my foreman about the north pasture. Will you be all right on your own today? The tools are in the shed there. Of course, Lucy assured him. I'll start assessing which trees need the most immediate attention and perhaps harvest what I can reach without the boys' help. August nodded, seemingly satisfied. I'll check on your progress before supper. As he walked away, Lucy watched him for a moment, struck by the contradictions in the man. He was clearly educated and possessed means, yet chose to work with his hands and live in this remote setting. He was formal in some ways, yet surprisingly approachable in others. Pushing these thoughts aside, Lucy turned her attention to the trees. This was familiar territory, and for the first time since her parents' deaths, she felt a sense of purpose beyond mere survival. The October sun warmed her back as she worked through the morning, cataloging the condition of each tree in the first row and harvesting the lower hanging fruit. By midday, she had filled 3 baskets and had a clear idea of the work ahead. When Mrs. Winters appeared with a basket containing bread, cheese, and apples for her lunch, Lucy was surprised to realize how hungry she was. How are you settling in, dear? The older woman asked, looking around the orchard with approval. Very well, thank you, Lucy replied, gratefully accepting the food. It feels good to be working outdoors again. Mrs. Winters nodded knowingly. Better than selling apples on a street corner, I'd wager. Though that's how he found you, isn't it? Funny how life works sometimes. Indeed, Lucy agreed, curious about the woman's obvious fondness for August. Have you worked for Mr. Vance long? Just since he bought the place 3 months ago, but I knew him as a boy. Mrs. Winters sat on an overturned basket, clearly in no hurry to return to the house. His father and mine had neighboring claims near Denver years back. August was always a serious child, even before the tragedy. Lucy's interest was piqued. Tragedy? Mrs. Winter's expression sobered. Not my place to tell tales. But I will say this, there's good reason he understands what it means to be alone in the world. She stood abruptly. Mind you eat all that food, Miss Matthews. You're too thin by half. After the housekeeper left, Lucy continued her work with renewed energy, though her mind occasionally wandered to August's past. By late afternoon, she had catalogued nearly 50 trees and harvested enough apples to fill the small cellar beneath her cabin. She was stretching to reach a particularly fine specimen when a voice startled her. You should wait for the boys tomorrow. That ladder doesn't look particularly stable. Lucy turned to find August watching her from the edge of the row. She hadn't heard him approach. I was being careful, she assured him, descending the ladder with the apple in hand. And this one was worth the reach. She held it out to him, a perfect northern spy, deep red with hints of green. August accepted it, turning it in his hand before taking a bite. Excellent, he pronounced, the juice glistening on his lips, sweet with just enough tartness. Something about the way he savored the fruit made Lucy's cheeks warm, and she turned quickly to adjust the ladder. I've completed the assessment of the first 50 trees. Most are in reasonable condition, though they'll need significant pruning. August wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, studying her with those blue eyes that seemed to see more than she intended to reveal. You've accomplished a great deal for one day, Miss Matthews. Lucy, she corrected him impulsively. If I'm to call you August, then you should use my given name as well. A slow smile spread across his face. Lucy, then, would you care to join me for supper in the house tonight? Mrs. Winters has prepared more food than I could possibly eat alone. The invitation surprised her, but Lucy found herself nodding. I'd like that. Let me just finish storing these apples and freshen up. Take your time. We eat at 6. August tossed the apple core into the tall grass at the edge of the orchard. And Lucy? Well done today. His simple approval shouldn't have mattered so much, but Lucy felt a warm glow of satisfaction as she watched him walk back toward the main house. It had been a long time since someone had valued her work or seen her as more than just a pitiful orphan to be avoided or pitied. That evening, as they shared a meal of roast chicken and vegetables at the large dining table, Lucy found herself relaxing in August's company. Their conversation flowed more easily than she would have expected. Moving from practical matters of the orchard to books they had both read to gentle debates about the merits of various apple varieties. Winesap makes the best pies, Lucy insisted. The flavor holds up to baking. But Northern Spy has the perfect balance for eating fresh, August countered, refilling her glass with cider. I'll concede that point, Lucy laughed, surprising herself with how natural it felt to be sitting across from this man she barely knew, debating something as simple as apple varieties. August's expression grew more serious. You have a lovely laugh, Lucy. You should use it more often. The observation caught her off guard, and she lowered her eyes to her plate. There hasn't been much cause for laughter lately. No, I suppose not. August studied her for a moment. Your parents, was it sudden? Lucy nodded, the familiar ache returning. Influenza last winter. My father first, then my mother 3 days later. They had the store, but there were debts I didn't know about. After the funeral expenses, there was nothing left. I'm sorry, August said simply. Loss changes us. Sometimes in ways we don't recognize until years later. Something in his tone made Lucy look up. Mrs. Winters mentioned you had experienced tragedy as well. August's expression closed slightly. Did she now? Well, everyone has their sorrows. Mine are long past. He stood abruptly. Would you care for coffee? Lucy recognized the deflection but didn't press. No, thank you. I should probably return to my cabin. Morning comes early. August nodded, his composure regained. Of course. I'll walk you back. The night air was crisp as they walked the path to the cabin, their way lit by the lantern August carried. Stars speckled the clear sky, and a crescent moon hung low over the distant mountains. It's beautiful here, Lucy observed, pulling her shawl tighter around her shoulders. It is, August agreed. Different from Wyoming. Gentler somehow. They reached the cabin door, and August handed Lucy the lantern. For a moment, they stood in its small circle of light, neither speaking. Thank you for supper, Lucy finally said, breaking the silence. Thank you for the company, August replied softly. Good night, Lucy. Good night, August. Inside her cabin, Lucy prepared for bed, her mind replaying moments from the evening, the way August's eyes crinkled when he smiled, the respectful attention he paid to her opinions, the careful way he avoided talking about his past. As she drifted off to sleep, Lucy reminded herself firmly that August Vance was her employer, nothing more. The strange fluttering in her chest whenever he looked at her way was simply gratitude for the opportunity. He had provided a chance to rebuild her life when all seemed lost. Yet in her dreams that night, she saw his face as he bit into the apple she had given him, tasted its sweetness, and woke with the lingering sensation of his name on her lips. The following days established a rhythm to life at the Vance Ranch. The Peterson twins' towhead boys named Thomas and Timothy proved to be reliable workers, arriving at dawn and working steadily through the day. Under Lucy's direction, they harvested the ripest apples from the highest branches, carefully packing them in straw-lined crates for transport. Lucy found herself flourishing in her new role. The physical work strengthened her body, which had grown too thin during her months of near starvation. Regular meals restored color to her cheeks, and the constant activity outdoors gave her skin a healthy glow. August was often absent during the days, attending to the cattle operation or riding the boundaries of his property. But he made a point to check on the orchard's progress each evening, and more often than not, he invited Lucy to share supper at the main house. These evening meals became the highlight of Lucy's days. August proved to be well-read and thoughtful, with a dry wit that emerged more frequently as they grew comfortable with each other. He never pressed her about her past but listened attentively when she chose to share memories of her parents or her life before their deaths. In turn, he gradually revealed small pieces of his own history, his education back east, his early struggles as a ranch hand, his eventual success in the cattle business. But whenever Lucy gently probed about his family or his life before Wyoming, he skillfully changed the subject. 2 weeks into her employment, with the apple harvest nearly complete, Lucy was sorting the fruit in the cool storage room they had established in the ranch's root cellar when August appeared at the door. "I've just received word from the Denver merchant," he announced, holding up a telegram. "He'll send wagons for the apples next week and has agreed to our price." Lucy set down the apple she'd been inspecting. "That's wonderful news. How many crates will he take?" "All of them," August replied with a satisfied smile. "Every last one. And he's interested in contracting for next year's harvest as well, at an even better price if we can increase production. With proper care through the winter and spring, we certainly can," Lucy assured him, excitement building in her chest. "The trees have good bones, as my father used to say. They just need attention." August's smile widened at her enthusiasm. "In that case, I have a proposition for you, Lucy Matthews." She raised an eyebrow, remembering his first proposition in the street of Willow Creek. "I'm offering to make your position permanent," August continued. "Not just through the harvest, but year-round. Managing the orchard, expanding it perhaps, developing it into a proper business." Lucy's heart quickened. "You'd trust me with that responsibility?" I've watched you these past weeks, August said, his expression serious now. You have knowledge, yes, but more importantly, you have intuition about the trees and genuine care for them. That can't be taught. He paused. And selfishly, I enjoy having you here. The last admission hung in the air between them, more significant somehow than the job offer itself. Lucy felt her cheeks warm under his steady gaze. I would be happy to stay, she said softly. I've come to love this place. Just the orchard, or more. The unspoken question seemed to flicker in August's eyes, but he simply nodded. Excellent. We'll discuss the details over supper. Mrs. Winters is making her famous venison stew. That evening, as they sat before the fireplace in the main house's sitting room after their meal, August outlined his vision for the orchard's future. He wanted to expand by another 3 acres in the spring, perhaps experiment with new varieties, and eventually build a proper packing shed. We could even try cider production in a few years, he suggested, swirling the whiskey in his glass. There's good money in it, and the less perfect apples wouldn't go to waste. Lucy, comfortable in an armchair with a book on fruit cultivation August had ordered for her from Denver, found herself enchanted by his enthusiasm. You've given this considerable thought for someone who claims to be primarily a cattleman. August's expression turned reflective. I've learned that it's wise to diversify. Cattle prices fluctuate, diseases can decimate a herd, harsh winters can starve them. But trees endure. They're patient in a way that speaks to me. They are, Lucy agreed, setting aside her book. My father used to say that apple trees teach us to think in seasons rather than days, that there's a wisdom in their patience. Your father sounds like he was a thoughtful man. He was, Lucy said, the familiar ache of loss tempered now by fond remembrance. He would have liked you, I think. August smiled at that, but there was something sad in his eyes as he looked into the fire. I hope so. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the crackle of burning logs. Outside, the wind had picked up, rattling the windows with the promise of the winter to come. It will snow soon, August observed. We should finish the pruning within the week if possible. The twins and I can manage most of it, Lucy assured him. You've been busy with the cattle. Nevertheless, I'd like to learn, August insisted. As you suggested, perhaps in the evenings? After the boys have gone home. Lucy nodded, trying to ignore the small thrill at the prospect of spending more time with him. Of course, we can start tomorrow if you'd like. Later, as August walked her back to her cabin as had become their custom, the wind tugged at their clothing and sent leaves spiraling around their feet. Winter comes early in these mountains, August commented, holding the lantern higher against the darkness. Are you prepared for the isolation it brings? Lucy considered the question seriously. I think so. I have books and work to plan for spring, and I'm accustomed to being alone. They reached her door, and August turned to face her, the lantern light casting shadows across his features. You're not alone anymore, Lucy. The simple statement, spoken quietly against the wind's moan, struck Lucy with unexpected force. She looked up into August's face, seeing something there that mirrored the growing warmth in her own heart. No, she agreed softly. I suppose I'm not. For a moment it seemed he might say more or perhaps do more, but then August stepped back slightly, tipping his hat. Good night, Lucy. Sleep well. Good night, August. Inside her cabin, Lucy leaned against the closed door, her heart beating too quickly. She was falling for him, had been falling since that first day in town when he had offered her not just money, but dignity. And sometimes, when he looked at her in that intent way of his, she thought perhaps he felt something too. But he was her employer, and she was a penniless orphan who had been selling apples on a street corner mere weeks ago. Whatever August felt for her kindness, admiration, perhaps even attraction. It would be foolish to imagine it could lead to anything more. With that sobering thought, Lucy prepared for bed, determined to maintain the professional relationship that had served them both well thus far. Yet as she drifted off to sleep, it was August's face she saw behind her closed eyelids, and the echo of his words, "You're not alone anymore," that followed her into dreams. True to August's prediction, the first snow arrived 3 days later, dusting the orchard with white and forcing them to accelerate the pruning schedule. The Peterson twins, eager to finish before the weather worsened, worked diligently through the shortened daylight hours, following Lucy's instructions with increasing skill. In the evenings, after the boys had gone home, August joined Lucy among the trees, learning the art of proper pruning under her patient guidance. Despite his professed ignorance, he proved a quick study, his hands strong and surprisingly deft as he shaped the trees for future growth. "The key is to see what the tree could become, not just what it is now," Lucy explained one evening, demonstrating the proper angle for a cut. "You're creating pathways for light and air, imagining next year's fruit even as you remove this year's growth." August watched her hands, then made his own cut on a nearby branch. "Like many things in life," he observed, "it requires sacrifice in the present for the promise of future abundance." "Exactly," Lucy agreed, pleased by his understanding. "Some would say it's an act of faith. Do you have faith, Lucy?" August asked, his question seeming to encompass more than just horticulture. She considered this as they moved to the next tree. "I believe in what I can nurture with my own hands," she finally answered, "in growth and seasons and the resilience of living things. Beyond that," she shrugged, "life has taught me to be practical." August nodded, understanding in his eyes. "A reasonable position for someone who has faced what you have." He made another careful cut, then added, "Yet here you are, planning for next year's harvest when months ago you didn't know where your next meal would come from. That suggests some faith, does it not?" Lucy smiled at his gentle challenge. "Perhaps you're right, or perhaps it's simply that you've given me reason to believe in tomorrow again." The words had slipped out before she could consider their implication, and Lucy quickly turned her attention back to the tree, aware of the heat rising in her cheeks despite the cold air. August said nothing for a long moment, then set down his pruning shears and moved to stand before her. "Lucy," he said softly, waiting until she met his eyes, "I need to tell you something." The seriousness in his voice made her heart skip anxiously. "Yes. When I first saw you in town that day, with your cart of apples and your brave face despite the obvious hardship, I recognized something in you that spoke to me." August's breath fogged in the cold air between them. "A determination I once needed myself, a refusal to surrender to circumstances." Lucy stood very still, uncertain where this confession was leading. "I told you someone took a chance on me when I had nothing," August continued. "What I didn't say is that it was Edward Calloway, the previous owner of this ranch." Lucy's eyes widened in surprise. "I was 19, orphaned and desperate, when he found me sleeping in his livery stable in Denver. Instead of having me arrested, he offered me work on his ranch, this ranch." August gestured to the land around them. "I worked for him for 5 years, learning everything he would teach me about ranching. When I left to start my own operation in Wyoming, it was with his blessing and a small loan that I repaid with interest. So when you purchased this property," Lucy began, understanding dawning. "It was completing a circle," August confirmed. "Edward wrote to me last year, saying his health was failing and his children had no interest in the ranch. He asked if I might consider buying it when he passed." A shadow crossed August's face. "He died before I could arrange it, but his son was more than willing to sell to me." "Why didn't you tell me this before?" Lucy asked quietly. August's gaze was steady. "At first, it didn't seem relevant. Then, as I came to know you, I worried you might think I'd hired you out of some misplaced sense of obligation, paying forward an old debt rather than recognizing your genuine abilities. And did you? Lucy couldn't help asking, though she feared the answer. No, August said firmly. I saw a woman of intelligence and courage who needed an opportunity. Yes, but I also recognized someone who could help make this orchard thrive again, something Edward's wife had loved dearly before her death. He paused. What I didn't anticipate was how quickly you would become essential to more than just the orchard. The implication of his words hung in the cold air between them. Lucy's heart beat so loudly she was certain he must hear it. August. But whatever she might have said was interrupted by a shout from the direction of the main house. They both turned to see Mrs. Winters hurrying toward them, waving urgently. Mr. Vance. Riders coming, it's the Peterson boy's father. Says there's trouble in town. August's expression immediately shifted from intimate to alert. We'll continue this conversation later, he said to Lucy, squeezing her hand briefly before striding toward the house. Lucy followed more slowly, her mind whirling with August's revelation and the words that had remained unspoken between them. By the time she reached the yard, August was already conferring with Samuel Peterson, the twins' father and Willow Creek's deputy sheriff. Stagecoach robbery 3 miles east of town. Peterson was explaining, his face grim. Driver killed, passengers robbed. Doc Jenkins is tending to 2 wounded, but we're forming a posse to go after the gang. Thought you should know they were headed this way, and we could use another good rifle. August nodded grimly. Give me 5 minutes to saddle my horse and get my gear. He turned to Lucy, who stood on the porch. Stay inside with Mrs. Winters. Make sure all the doors are locked. Be careful, Lucy urged, suddenly afraid. August's expression softened briefly. I will. This shouldn't take long, probably just some drifters who'll head for the mountains when they realize they're pursued. Within minutes, August had joined Peterson and 3 other men who had ridden up, all armed and wearing determined expressions. Lucy watched from the porch as they rode away, disappearing into the gathering dusk with a thunder of hoofbeats. Come inside, Miss Matthews, Mrs. Winters urged, her usually cheerful face creased with worry. No sense catching your death in this cold. Inside the main house, the housekeeper busied herself preparing coffee and setting out cold ham and bread. Men always return from these things hungry as wolves, she explained, her hands moving with practiced efficiency despite her obvious concern. Does this happen often? Lucy asked, accepting the coffee gratefully. Stagecoach robberies? Not so much these days, with the railroad taking most travelers. But there's always some trouble or other rustlers. Drifters looking for easy pickings. Mrs. Winters shook her head. The laws spread thin out here. As the evening wore on with no sign of August or the posse, Lucy found it impossible to concentrate on anything. She tried reading, then attempted to help Mrs. Winters with household tasks. But her mind kept returning to August riding into potential danger and to the conversation that had been interrupted at its most critical moment. What had he been about to say? What had she been about to answer? It was nearly midnight when they heard horses in the yard. Lucy rushed to the window, relief flooding through her at the sight of August dismounting, apparently unharmed. Several other riders were with him, including Deputy Peterson. Mrs. Winters hurried to open the door, and the men filed in, stamping snow from their boots and rubbing cold, reddened hands. Any luck? Mrs. Winters asked, already pouring coffee. Tracked them to the Henderson place, Peterson replied grimly. Found evidence they'd holed up in the abandoned barn there. But they were gone by the time we arrived, probably heard us coming and scattered into the hills. We found this, though, August added, placing a leather satchel on the table. Looks like they dropped it in their hurry to escape. Some of the passengers' belongings and about half the money from the strongbox. Peterson nodded. Better than nothing. I'll return what I can to the victims tomorrow. The men ate quickly, discussing the likelihood of capturing the robbers and the condition of the wounded passengers. Lucy hovered at the edge of the room, relieved that August was safe, but sensing that this incident had changed something, created a tension that hadn't existed before. After the posse departed, promising to return at first light to continue the search, August closed the door with a weary sigh. "You should get some rest," Lucy suggested, noticing the lines of fatigue around his eyes. "As should you," he replied with a small smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "It's been a long day for all of us. I'll just clean up these dishes and be on my way," Lucy began, but August shook his head. "Leave them. Mrs. Winters can see to it in the morning." He hesitated, then added, "Lucy, about our conversation earlier." "It can wait," she assured him, seeing the exhaustion in his face. "You've had more urgent matters to attend to." August studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Tomorrow, then, after we've both had some sleep." But tomorrow brought new complications. The Peterson twins didn't arrive for work, having been kept home by their worried mother. Around mid-morning, August rode out again to join the continued search for the robbers, leaving Lucy alone with her thoughts and the half-pruned orchard. The day passed slowly, the sky heavy with the promise of more snow. Lucy worked methodically, focusing on the familiar task of pruning to keep her mind from wandering too often to August and the danger he might be facing. It was nearly dusk when she heard hoofbeats again, and she looked up expectantly, hoping to see August returning. Instead, 3 rough-looking men on exhausted horses emerged from the tree line at the edge of the orchard. Lucy froze, pruning shears in hand, as the men spotted her and changed direction, heading directly toward her. "Well, look what we have here," the leader called, a tall man with a scar running from his temple to his jaw. "Didn't expect to find such a pretty little thing out here all alone." Lucy took a step backward, calculating the distance to the main house and knowing she couldn't outrun their horses. "I'm not alone," she said firmly, trying to keep the fear from her voice. "My employer and several hands are just at the barn." The scarred man laughed, an ugly sound. "Nice try, miss. We've been watching this place. The boss rode out hours ago with that posse, and there ain't no ranch hands to speak of." He dismounted slowly, his eyes never leaving her face. "Now, we're in a bit of a hurry, having some law troubles, but I reckon we can spare a few minutes to enjoy some company." Lucy gripped the pruning shears tighter, knowing they were a poor weapon against 3 men but determined not to surrender without a fight. "The house," the scarred man instructed his companions. "See what you can find. I'll handle the lady." As the other 2 men rode toward the main house, the leader approached Lucy with a predatory smile. "No need to look so frightened, miss. You be nice to Silas, and Silas will be nice to you." "Stay back," Lucy warned, raising the shears. "I'm not afraid to use these." Silas chuckled, clearly amused by her defiance. "Spirited. I like that, but don't be foolish, girl. Put down those shears before you hurt yourself." When Lucy didn't comply, his expression darkened. "Have it your way." He lunged suddenly, faster than she expected, grabbing her wrist and twisting until she cried out in pain and dropped the shears. "That's better," Silas growled, pulling her roughly against him. Now the crack of a rifle shot cut through the air, and Silas jerked backward, releasing Lucy as he clutched his shoulder. Blood seeped between his fingers as he whirled around, searching for the shooter. "Step away from her," August's voice commanded from the edge of the orchard. He stood with his rifle aimed steadily, already chambering another round. "The next one goes through your heart." Silas raised his uninjured arm slowly. "Now hold on, mister. We were just looking for some supplies. That's all. You're looking for a place to hide after robbing that stagecoach, August replied coldly. And you chose poorly. From the direction of the main house came another shot, followed by shouting. Deputy Peterson and 2 other men appeared, driving the other robbers before them at gunpoint. Found these 2 ransacking your place, Vance? Peterson called. This the 3rd one? It is, August confirmed, not lowering his rifle. And he was about to discover that threatening Miss Matthews is the last mistake he would ever make. The cold fury in August's voice sent a shiver down Lucy's spine, even as relief flooded through her. Peterson and his men quickly secured all 3 robbers, binding their hands and confiscating their weapons. We'll take them back to town, Peterson said. Judge Willis is due next week. They'll face trial for murder and robbery. August finally lowered his rifle, moving quickly to Lucy's side. Are you hurt? He asked urgently, his eyes searching her face. Just my wrist, she answered, the shock of the encounter beginning to register now that the danger had passed. He twisted it. August's expression darkened as he gently examined her wrist, which was already beginning to bruise. Nothing seems broken, but we should have the doctor look at it to be certain. As Peterson and his men prepared to leave with their prisoners, August spoke quietly to the deputy, then returned to Lucy's side. Let's get you inside. Mrs. Winters can prepare a cold compress for that wrist. The warmth of the main house was a welcome relief after the tension and cold of the orchard. Mrs. Winters fussed over Lucy, wrapping her wrist and preparing hot tea laced with whiskey for the shock, while August secured the house, checking doors and windows with methodical care. When he finally joined Lucy before the fire in the sitting room, his face was still tight with barely contained anger. They could have killed you, he said without preamble, pacing before the hearth. But they didn't, Lucy replied softly. Thanks to you. August stopped pacing, his expression shifting from anger to something more vulnerable. If I had been a few minutes later. But you weren't, Lucy assured him, rising from her chair to stand before him. You came back in time. August reached out slowly, as if afraid she might break, and traced the line of her cheek with his fingertips. When I saw that man touching you, I nearly shot him dead where he stood. The admission, spoken in a low, intense voice, should have frightened Lucy. Instead, it sent a wave of warmth through her body. I'm glad you didn't. You're not a killer, August. For you, he said quietly, I would be many things I never thought possible. The space between them seemed to contract, the air heavy with unspoken feelings. August's hand cradled her cheek now, his thumb brushing lightly across her skin. Yesterday, before we were interrupted, he began, his voice barely above a whisper. I was about to tell you something important. Lucy's heart raced as she looked up into his eyes, seeing there a reflection of her own feelings. What was it? She asked, though she thought she already knew the answer. That I'm falling in love with you, Lucy Matthews, August said simply. That you've brought life back to more than just this orchard. That I can no longer imagine my days without you in them. Lucy's breath caught in her throat. Despite the signs, despite her hopes, hearing him say the words aloud was overwhelming. You don't have to answer now, August continued quickly, misinterpreting her silence. I know it's sudden, and our circumstances. Lucy pressed her fingers gently against his lips, stopping his words. I was falling for you before I even knew your name, she confessed. That day in town when you bought all my apples. No one had shown me such kindness in so long. It wasn't kindness, August corrected her softly. It was recognition. I saw in you a spirit that refused to be broken, a dignity that poverty couldn't touch. How could I not be drawn to that? Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, August lowered his head until their lips were just a breath apart. May I? he whispered. In answer, Lucy closed the distance between them, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that began gently but quickly deepened as months of loneliness and weeks of growing attraction melted away in the warmth of their shared embrace. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, August rested his forehead against hers. "I never expected this when I bought those apples," he murmured, a smile in his voice. Lucy laughed softly, feeling lighter than she had in years. "Neither did I. But I'm very glad you did." Outside, snow began to fall again, blanketing the orchard in pristine white, nature's promise of renewal and growth to come when winter finally yielded to spring. Inside, before the crackling fire, August and Lucy found in each other the promise of a future neither had dared to imagine just weeks before. Winter settled over the Vance ranch, transforming the landscape into a wonderland of white drifts and ice crystal mornings. With the orchard pruning complete and the apple harvest safely delivered to the Denver merchant, at a profit that exceeded even August's expectations, Lucy found herself with time to plan for spring planting and to explore her changing relationship with August. Their courtship progressed with a warmth that belied the frigid temperatures outside. Evenings were spent before the fire in the main house, sharing books and conversation, occasionally joined by Mrs. Winters, who watched their growing affection with approving eyes. Daytime brought shared work, August teaching Lucy about the cattle operation while she educated him further on orchard management. Christmas approached, bringing with it a festive atmosphere that Lucy hadn't expected to enjoy after the loss of her parents. Mrs. Winters decorated the main house with pine boughs and red ribbons, filling the rooms with the scents of cinnamon and cloves, as she baked treats that reminded Lucy of happier holidays from her childhood. "We should get a tree," August suggested one evening in mid-December as they sat in the study reviewing the ledgers for the year's end. "A proper Christmas tree for the front parlor." Lucy looked up from the account book, touched by his enthusiasm. "That would be lovely. I haven't had a Christmas tree since before my parents fell ill." The following day, August took Lucy into the foothills above the ranch, where stands of pine and spruce offered perfect candidates for a Christmas tree. The expedition became an adventure when their horses struggled through unexpected deep snow, requiring them to dismount and lead the animals through a particularly difficult stretch. "I should have checked the trail first," August apologized, his breath fogging in the cold air as he helped Lucy navigate a treacherous slope. "And missed this adventure? Not a chance," Lucy replied, her cheeks flushed with cold and excitement. Despite the challenges, she felt more alive than she had in years, her hand warm in August's as they trudged through the pristine snow. They finally found the perfect tree, a symmetrical blue spruce about 6 feet tall, and August cut it with practiced efficiency. Securing it to his horse's saddle, they began the journey back to the ranch, the early winter darkness already gathering around them. "We should hurry," August noted, glancing at the sky. "There's more snow coming, and I don't like the look of those clouds." They had just reached the edge of the ranch property when the storm hit, not gentle snowfall but a true blizzard, with howling wind that drove stinging ice crystals into any exposed skin. Visibility dropped to almost nothing in minutes. "The line cabin," August shouted over the wind, pointing toward a stand of trees where Lucy could just make out the dim outline of a small structure. "It's closer than the main house." They fought their way through deepening snow, leading the increasingly nervous horses. By the time they reached the cabin, a simple one-room shelter used by ranch hands when working the far pastures, both were half frozen despite their heavy winter clothing. August fumbled with the door latch, his gloved hands clumsy with cold, then ushered Lucy inside. The interior was dark and cold but mercifully out of the wind. While Lucy stood shivering, August quickly located matches and lit the oil lamp hanging from a central beam, revealing a sparse but serviceable shelter: a small stove, a narrow bed, a rough table with 2 chairs, and shelves stocked with basic provisions. "This is a stroke of luck," August said, moving immediately to the stove. Edward always kept the line cabins supplied in case of emergency. He began laying a fire with wood stacked neatly beside the stove. We can wait out the storm here. Lucy removed her snow-encrusted gloves, rubbing her numb fingers. What about the horses? There's a lean-to around back. I'll secure them there once I get this fire going. August struck a match, carefully nursing the flame until the kindling caught. Once the fire was established, August ventured back into the storm to tend to the horses, returning several minutes later covered in fresh snow but satisfied that the animals were sheltered and secure. They'll be fine, he assured Lucy, removing his coat and hat. The lean-to blocks the worst of the wind, and I gave them each a measure of oats from the storage bin. Lucy had been exploring the cabin supplies while he was outside. There's coffee and beans, some jerky, and even canned peaches, she reported. Enough to keep us from starving if we're stuck here. August moved to the cabin's single window, wiping condensation from the glass to peer outside. The storm showed no signs of abating. If anything, it had intensified. I think we should prepare to spend the night, he said, turning back to Lucy with an apologetic expression. It's not safe to try to reach the main house in this. Lucy nodded, trying to hide her nervousness at the impropriety of their situation. Unchaperoned overnight with a man to whom she was not married, it was the sort of circumstance that could ruin a woman's reputation in a small community like Willow Creek. Reading her thoughts, August said gently, Mrs. Winters knows we went to find a tree. When we don't return, she'll understand we've sought shelter from the storm. There's no cause for concern about appearances. I'm not concerned, Lucy replied, more firmly than she felt. I trust you completely, August. His expression softened. Your trust honors me. He glanced at the single narrow bed, then at the chairs by the small table. I'll take the chair tonight. You should have the bed. Lucy was about to protest when she noticed he was still shivering despite the growing warmth from the stove. You're frozen through, she observed with concern. You need to get out of those wet clothes before you catch your death. August smiled slightly at her maternal tone. As do you, he pointed out. Your skirts are soaked to the knees. This presented a practical problem. Neither had articulated how to change out of wet clothing in a one-room cabin with no privacy screens. After a moment's awkward silence, August came to a decision. I'll step outside while you change, he offered. There should be some clean blankets in the trunk under the bed. Wrap yourself in one, and then I'll come back in and turn my back while I change as well. Lucy nodded gratefully. Don't stay out too long. It's freezing out there. Once alone, Lucy quickly removed her wet dress, petticoats, and stockings, hanging them near the stove to dry. Finding a clean flannel shirt in the trunk that appeared to belong to August based on its size, she put it on over her chemise for additional warmth before wrapping a blanket around herself like a shawl. You can come in now, she called, her voice slightly unsteady. August returned, bringing a fresh blast of cold air with him. True to his word, he turned his back while he removed his own wet clothing, keeping up a stream of casual conversation about the storm and the Christmas tree they had managed to secure despite the weather. At least we didn't lose the tree in the blizzard, he remarked, pulling on a dry shirt and trousers from the cabin's supplies. That would have made this adventure entirely for naught. When both were changed and somewhat warmer, August set about preparing a simple meal from the cabin's provisions: coffee, beans heated on the stove, and jerky softened in the bean broth. The canned peaches would serve as dessert. They ate at the small table, the storm raging outside making their shelter seem all the more cozy despite its rustic simplicity. Lucy found herself relaxing as they talked, the initial awkwardness of their situation giving way to the easy companionship they had developed over the past months. After they had eaten and cleaned up, August added more wood to the stove, ensuring the cabin would remain warm through the night. Outside, darkness had fallen completely, the only sound the howling of the wind and the occasional creak of tree branches heavy with snow. "It reminds me of stories my father used to tell," Lucy said, sitting on the edge of the bed with her blanket still wrapped around her shoulders. "He grew up in Vermont and they had terrible blizzards there. He said sometimes they'd be snowed in for days, reading by lamplight and telling stories to pass the time." August settled into one of the chairs, stretching his long legs toward the stove's warmth. "What kind of stories did he tell?" "All kinds. Adventures, mysteries, even romances that made my mother blush." Lucy smiled at the memory. "But my favorites were about how they met and fell in love. How he saw her at a harvest dance and knew immediately she was the one he would marry. Love at first sight," August mused. "Do you believe in that?" Lucy considered the question. "I believe in recognition," she said finally, using the word August had once used to describe his own reaction to her. "Not that you know everything about a person at first glance, but that you recognize something essential in them, something that calls to something in yourself." August's eyes, warm in the lamplight, held hers. Like an apple seller who refuses to surrender her dignity despite desperate circumstances? Or a ranch owner who buys every apple and offers a stranger a chance when he has no reason to? Lucy countered softly. August rose from his chair and came to sit beside her on the bed, careful to maintain a respectful distance. "I've been thinking about that day a lot lately," he admitted. "How different my life would be now if I had ridden past your cart without stopping. If I had never heard your voice or seen your smile." Lucy's heart quickened at the tenderness in his expression. "We would both be poorer for it, I think." "I know I would be." August took her hand gently, his thumb tracing patterns on her palm. "Lucy, there's something I want to ask you. I had planned a more proper setting Christmas dinner perhaps, with everything perfect. But sitting here with you, I find I don't want to wait any longer." Lucy held her breath, hardly daring to hope he meant what she thought he did. August shifted slightly, taking both her hands in his now. "I love you, Lucy Matthews. These past months have shown me that what began as admiration has grown into something deeper and more precious than I ever expected to find. You've brought joy and purpose back into my life, and I cannot imagine a future without you by my side." He paused, his blue eyes earnest in the lamplight. "I'm asking if you would do me the great honor of becoming my wife." Though she had begun to anticipate his question, the reality of it still left Lucy momentarily speechless. Joy bubbled up inside her, nearly overwhelming in its intensity after the long months of hardship and loneliness that had preceded their meeting. "Yes," she whispered, tears of happiness threatening to spill from her eyes. "Yes, August Vance, I will marry you." August's face transformed with a smile of such pure happiness that Lucy felt her heart might burst from loving him. He leaned forward slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away if she wished, then kissed her with a tenderness that conveyed all the love and promise contained in their shared future. When they finally parted, August rested his forehead against hers. "I don't have a ring with me," he said apologetically. "It's in my desk at the main house." Lucy laughed softly. "I don't need a ring to know that I'm yours, and you are mine." They spent the evening planning their future together, discussing the expansion of the orchard, improvements to the main house, and the possibility of children someday. When fatigue finally overtook them, August insisted on taking the chair as promised, despite Lucy's protests. "I gave my word," he said firmly, "and I intend to be a husband you can trust to keep his promises, even the uncomfortable ones." Lucy relented, settling into the narrow bed while August arranged himself as comfortably as possible in the wooden chair. His feet propped on a small stool and a blanket wrapped around his shoulders. "Good night, my love," he said softly. "Good night," Lucy replied, her heart too full for more words. Outside, the blizzard raged on. But inside the small line cabin, warmth and love created a sanctuary against the winter's fury, a preview of the life they would build together. Morning brought clear skies and a transformed landscape, with snow piled in sculpted drifts that sparkled in the brilliant sunshine. August woke first, his neck stiff from sleeping upright in the chair, but his discomfort was forgotten as he gazed at Lucy still sleeping peacefully in the bed. Her chestnut hair spread across the pillow and her face relaxed in repose. "This is what I'll see every morning for the rest of my life," he thought, a wave of profound gratitude washing over him. "This remarkable woman has agreed to be my wife." Lucy stirred, opening her eyes to find August watching her with an expression of such tenderness that she blushed. "Good morning," she murmured, pulling the blanket up to her chin self-consciously. "Good morning, future Mrs. Vance," August replied with a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "The storm has passed. We can head home once we've had some breakfast." They prepared a simple meal together, moving around the small cabin with a new awareness of each other. Casual touches a hand at the small of her back, fingers brushing as they passed the coffee pot carried deeper meaning now. Promises of the intimacy they would share as husband and wife. After eating, they dressed in their now dry clothes from the previous day, packed up the few supplies they had used, and secured the cabin for the next visitor. Outside, the Christmas tree was still lashed to August's horse, covered in a dusting of snow that made it look as if it was already decorated. "It's beautiful," Lucy commented as August helped her mount her horse. "The perfect tree for our first Christmas together." The ride back to the ranch took longer than usual, as they had to navigate through deep snowdrifts, but they finally crested the hill overlooking the main house around mid-morning. Smoke rose cheerfully from the chimney, indicating Mrs. Winters was already at work inside. As they approached, the front door flew open, and the housekeeper hurried out, her face a mixture of relief and concern. "Thank the Lord you're both safe. I was beside myself with worry when you didn't return last night." "We took shelter in the North Line cabin," August explained as they dismounted. "The storm came up too quickly to make it back safely." Mrs. Winters looked between them, noting something different in their demeanor. Her eyes narrowed slightly, then widened in sudden understanding. "Well now," she said with a knowing smile, "seems like you might have more than just a Christmas tree to show for your adventure." Lucy felt her cheeks warm, but August laughed, putting his arm around her shoulders in a public declaration of their changed status. "You're as perceptive as ever, Mrs. Winters. Lucy has done me the great honor of agreeing to become my wife." The housekeeper clasped her hands together in delight. "Oh, my dears, that's the best news I could imagine." She hurried forward to embrace Lucy warmly. "I've been hoping for this since the day he brought you home, miss. You've brought the light back into his eyes." Lucy returned the embrace, touched by the woman's genuine happiness. "Thank you, Mrs. Winters. Your blessing means a great deal to us both." "Well, this calls for a proper celebration," the housekeeper declared. "I'll prepare a special supper tonight. And we must get that tree set up in the parlor right away." The rest of the day passed in a flurry of activity. The Christmas tree was erected in the front parlor and decorated with the ornaments Mrs. Winters had stored carefully in the attic: delicate glass balls, paper stars, and tiny carved wooden figures that had once belonged to Edward Calloway's wife. August disappeared into town for several hours, returning with packages that he refused to let Lucy see. "Christmas surprises," he said with a wink, storing them in his study behind a locked door. That evening, after Mrs. Winters had outdone herself preparing a celebratory meal, August brought out a small velvet box as they sat before the fire, the decorated Christmas tree glowing with candles in the corner. "I've had this for 2 weeks," he admitted, opening the box to reveal a delicate gold ring set with a perfect sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds. I was waiting for the right moment. Lucy gasped at the ring's beauty as August slid it onto her finger. It's exquisite, she breathed, admiring the way the stones caught the firelight. But it must have cost nothing I can't afford, August assured her, cutting off her concern about the expense. And nothing less than you deserve. They set the wedding date for the first day of spring, March 20th, 1874, a symbolic choice representing the new life they would begin together. News of their engagement spread quickly through Willow Creek, generating much discussion among the townspeople who had known Lucy only as the poor orphan selling apples on the street corner. They say he only proposed out of pity, Lucy overheard one woman whispering to another when she visited the general store in January. A man in his position could have had his pick of proper ladies from Denver. Though the words stung, Lucy held her head high, secure in August's love and her own worth. Later, when she mentioned the gossip to August, his expression darkened. "Small minds and smaller hearts," he said dismissively. "They cannot comprehend that I am the fortunate one in this match. You brought hope back into my life, Lucy, a life that had become nothing more than work and duty until I found you." As winter gradually loosened its grip on the land, Lucy and August prepared not only for their wedding but for the spring planting and expansion of the orchard. Lucy researched new apple varieties they might introduce, while August arranged for additional saplings to be delivered from a nursery in Missouri. Together, they planned modifications to the main house, converting a rarely used parlor into a study for Lucy, refreshing the master bedroom with new furnishings, and discussing which of the unused bedrooms might someday become a nursery. "Do you want children?" August asked one evening as they sat in his study reviewing their plans. The question was asked casually, but Lucy could hear the underlying importance in his tone. "Very much," she answered honestly. "I've always imagined having a family of my own someday." "And you?" August's expression softened. "More than I realized until I met you. Now I find myself imagining a little girl with your chestnut hair and determined spirit, or perhaps a boy with your kind heart and clever mind." Lucy felt a rush of love for this man who continued to surprise her with the depth of his feelings. "Our children will be fortunate to have you as their father," she said softly. The days passed quickly as their wedding approached. Lucy, with Mrs. Winter's help, created a simple but elegant wedding dress from fine cream-colored silk that August had ordered from Denver. The townswomen, initially judgmental of the match, gradually warmed to the couple as they observed August's obvious devotion and Lucy's quiet confidence. Mrs. Peterson, the boarding house owner who had been one of Lucy's few regular customers during her apple-selling days, became an unexpected ally, hosting a small gathering for Lucy where several local women presented her with handmade gifts for her new home. "You deserve happiness, dear," Mrs. Peterson told her warmly. "And anyone with eyes can see that man adores you." On the evening before their wedding, August presented Lucy with an unexpected gift, the deed to the apple orchard, transferred into her name. "The orchard is yours now," he explained as Lucy stared at the document in confusion. "Legally and completely yours, regardless of our marriage." "But why?" Lucy asked, not understanding the significance of the gesture. August took her hands, his expression serious. "Because I never want you to feel dependent or insecure again. This ensures that you will always have means and property of your own, no matter what the future holds." Tears filled Lucy's eyes as she grasped the profound meaning behind his gift, not just financial security, but respect for her as an equal partner. "Thank you," she whispered, embracing him tightly. "But I hope you know that what truly makes me secure is your love, not this deed." "I do know that," August assured her, kissing her forehead tenderly. "Just as your love has given me a security I never found in any property or business success." The wedding day dawned clear and mild, the first truly spring-like day of the year. White blossoms had begun to appear on the earliest apple trees, a perfect backdrop for the ceremony that would take place beneath their branches. Lucy prepared in what would soon be their shared bedroom, Mrs. Winters fussing with her hair and the simple veil that would accompany the cream silk dress. Through the window, she could see guests arriving, townspeople, neighboring ranchers, and the few friends August had invited from his Wyoming days. A knock at the door revealed Deputy Peterson's wife, Mary, who had become a friend during the wedding preparations. "May I come in? I've brought something for you." When Lucy nodded, Mary entered, carrying a small package wrapped in tissue paper. "It's traditional for a bride to have something borrowed," she explained, carefully unwrapping the package to reveal a delicate lace handkerchief. "This was my grandmother's. She carried it at her wedding and I at mine. I thought you might like to carry it today." Touched by the gesture from a woman who had once been merely a customer, Lucy accepted the handkerchief gratefully. "Thank you, Mary. It's perfect." Mary smiled, adjusting a strand of Lucy's hair that had escaped its pins. "You know, when August first brought you to the ranch, there was quite a bit of talk in town." "I can imagine," Lucy said dryly. "But watching you two together these past months." Mary shook her head. "Well, it's clear as day that what you have is real and precious. Not many find that kind of love, Lucy. Hold on to it tightly." Another knock announced that it was time. Lucy took a final look in the mirror, barely recognizing the confident, glowing woman who looked back at her. How far she had come from that desperate girl selling apples on a street corner. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of emotion and beauty. Lucy would later remember fragments: the scent of apple blossoms, the warmth of August's hands as he took hers, the tenderness in his voice as he spoke his vows, the cheers of the assembled guests as they were pronounced husband and wife, and the sweetness of their first kiss as a married couple. The celebration afterward was joyful, with tables set up in the orchard, music provided by local musicians, and food prepared by Mrs. Winters and several town women who had put aside their initial skepticism to embrace Lucy as August's chosen bride. As evening approached, August led Lucy away from the festivities to a quiet spot among the trees. "Happy?" he asked, his arms encircling her waist. "Completely," she answered truthfully, leaning against his chest. "I never imagined such happiness was possible." "Nor did I," August admitted, resting his chin on top of her head. "Not until I saw a determined young woman selling apples from a cart, refusing to surrender her dignity despite circumstances that would have broken many others." Lucy turned in his arms to face him. "Do you know what I thought when I first saw you? Before you spoke, before you bought my apples?" August raised an eyebrow curiously. "What?" "I thought, there is a man who has known sorrow but hasn't been defeated by it." Lucy traced the line of his jaw with her fingertips. "I didn't know then that we would heal each other." August captured her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "And we have, haven't we? Healed each other." "We have," Lucy agreed, standing on tiptoe to kiss him properly, not caring who might see them among the apple trees. "And we will continue to, every day for the rest of our lives." Later that night, as husband and wife retired to their bedroom in the main house, no longer separate dwellings, no longer held apart by propriety, August drew Lucy into his arms with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. "I love you, Mrs. Vance," he whispered against her hair. "And I love you," Lucy replied, her heart so full she thought it might burst with happiness. In the orchard outside their window, the apple blossoms glowed silver in the moonlight, promising a bountiful harvest to come just as their love promised a lifetime of joy, challenges faced together, and the deep contentment of having found in each other everything they had never dared to hope for. 5 years later, autumn 1879, Lucy Vance stood beneath the laden branches of a northern spy apple tree, her expert eyes assessing the crop with satisfaction. The past 5 years had transformed the once-neglected orchard into one of the most productive in the county, with Vance apples now sought after by merchants throughout Colorado and beyond. "Mama! Mama! Look!" A small voice called from nearby, and Lucy turned to see her 3-year-old daughter, Emma, toddling toward her with an apple clutched in both hands. Behind her came August, carrying their infant son, James, who had arrived just 4 months earlier. "I picked it myself," Emma announced proudly, presenting the apple to her mother. "Papa helped a little," she added with the honesty that made Lucy's heart melt every time. "It's a beautiful apple," Lucy praised, accepting the slightly lopsided fruit and polishing it on her apron. "Perfect for pie, don't you think?" Emma nodded enthusiastically, her chestnut curls so like Lucy's own bouncing with the motion. "Can I help make it?" "Of course you can," Lucy promised, smoothing her daughter's hair. "Mrs. Winters said you're becoming quite the little baker." August reached them, shifting baby James to his other arm. The infant regarded his mother with solemn blue eyes, his father's eyes before breaking into a toothless grin. "Someone's ready for his lunch," August observed, passing the baby to Lucy. "And I promised this young lady a ride on Pepper after she showed you her apple-picking skills." Emma's eyes lit up. "Can I ride him all by myself today, Papa? Please." "We'll see," August hedged, though his indulgent smile suggested he would likely give in to his daughter's request as he usually did. "Only if you promise to hold on tight and follow all my instructions." "I promise," Emma declared, already skipping toward the barn where her favorite pony awaited. August kissed Lucy's cheek before following their daughter. "We won't be long, just once around the paddock." Lucy nodded, adjusting James in her arms as he began to fuss. "Take your time. We'll be in the house when you're finished." As she walked back toward the main house, significantly expanded and improved over the years, Lucy reflected on how completely her life had transformed since that desperate autumn day when August had bought all her apples and offered her hope for tomorrow. The hope had blossomed into a love deeper and richer than she could have imagined, and together they had built not just a successful business but a true home filled with laughter, love, and the joyful chaos of family life. The Vance apple orchard was now known throughout the region for its quality fruit, with Lucy's innovative cultivation techniques and August's business acumen proving a powerful combination. They had expanded to 10 acres of trees, experimented successfully with new varieties, and added a cider press that produced a premium product sold as far away as Denver and Santa Fe. But more important than their commercial success was the happiness they had found together. August had been right that day so long ago they had healed each other, filling the empty spaces created by loss and loneliness with a love that continued to grow with each passing season. Inside the house, Lucy settled into the comfortable rocking chair in the nursery to feed James. Through the window, she could see August leading Emma on her pony, his patient instruction and obvious pride in their daughter evident even from a distance. James suckled contentedly, his tiny hand resting against his mother's breast. Lucy stroked his downy head, overwhelmed as she often was by the pure love she felt for her children and for the man who had made this life possible. Later, after Emma's riding lesson and James's nap, the family gathered in the kitchen where Lucy and her daughter prepared an apple pie with Emma's carefully selected fruit. August sat at the table, baby James on his lap, watching his wife and daughter with undisguised adoration. "What are you thinking about, my love?" Lucy asked, noticing his contemplative expression. "I was remembering the day we met," August replied, bouncing James gently as the baby cooed. "How close I came to riding past your apple cart without stopping." Lucy smiled, wiping flour from her hands. "But you didn't. You stopped." "Best decision I ever made," August said with conviction, "though I had no idea where it would lead." "To apple pie, obviously," Emma interjected seriously, making both her parents laugh. Yes, to apple pie, August agreed, tousling his daughter's hair. And to the most wonderful family a man could ask for. That evening, after the children were asleep, August and Lucy stood on the porch of their home, his arm around her waist as they gazed out at the orchard silvered by moonlight. In the distance, they could see the small cabin where Lucy had first lived, now converted into a cozy guest house for visitors. "Are you happy, Lucy?" August asked, echoing the question he had posed on their wedding day 5 years earlier. Lucy turned in his embrace, reaching up to touch his face, still handsome, though now with threads of silver at his temples and laugh lines etched more deeply around his eyes. "Happier than I ever dreamed possible," she answered truthfully. "Are you?" "More than words can express." August pulled her closer, his kiss still sending the same thrill through her body after all their years together. "Who would have thought that a cart of apples could lead to all this?" Lucy smiled against his lips. "Perhaps the apples knew what they were doing all along." August laughed softly. "Perhaps they did." He grew more serious, his blue eyes tender in the moonlight. "Thank you for giving me this life, Lucy, for our children, for your love, for making this place truly a home." "We gave it to each other," Lucy corrected gently. "That day in town you didn't just buy my apples, August. You gave me hope when I had none left. Everything since has been our journey together." As they stood embracing under the vast Colorado sky, surrounded by the orchard that had brought them together and the home they had built with love, Lucy thought about the desperate young woman she had once been and the fulfilled, joyful woman she had become. From selling apples to survive to harvesting them from her own orchard. From loneliness to a love that sustained her through all of life's challenges. From desperation to hope that had blossomed into happiness beyond measure, her journey had been remarkable in every way. And it had all begun with a chance encounter, a cart of apples, and a cowboy whose compassion had changed everything. "I love you, August Vance," Lucy whispered against his chest, feeling his heart beat steady and strong beneath her cheek. "And I love you, Lucy Vance," he replied, his arms tightening around her. Today, tomorrow, and all the days to come. In the orchard, a gentle breeze stirred the branches, carrying the sweet scent of ripening apples, nature's testament to the fruits of patience, care, and enduring love.